Hello, my name is Jane Tingley, and I'm the curator of the exhibition More Than Human. This exhibition features the artwork of 8 international and national artists and artist duos who are all working at the intersection of art, science, technology, and indigenous worldviews in different ways. The artworks in the show are focusing on multimodal storytelling. So a lot of the artists are using technologies like VR, like visualizations, microscopes, different ways of sort of telling the story of non-human experiences as a way of trying to help decenter the human experience and to try to offer a little insight into the other ways and the other life forms that live on the planet. The exhibition is open until May 13th, and I really hope that you have a chance to come by. So this is a work by Suzanne Morissette. The piece is called One and the Same, and it was produced in 2016. So with this work, the artist was thinking a lot about landscape and the relationship that the body has with landscape, and thinking about that relationship as reciprocal. And interestingly, she talks a little bit about landscape as it's sort of historically, at least within a Western framework, considered, where you have sort of a central viewer who is looking out on the land and sort of owning that land and sort of having that sort of dominion over land. Whereas the landscape that Suzanne is interested in is the one where the body and the viewer, the person, the experiencer of the landscape is embedded within that landscape. And so she's creating a one-to-one relationship with the body and the land. And so, for example, I'm just going to go over here and show you how it works. The viewer can enter into the space, and you'll notice that as the body moves, the landscape is also moving at the same time, which sort of highlights that relationship between the body of the viewer and their impact on landscape in general. We chose to put in just this artwork because I was very interested in the non-human other being grass in this particular case. This artwork is called Untitled Interspecies Umwelten by the artist Joel Ong, and it was produced in 2022. The piece is centered on euglenia, which are single-celled organisms that live in water. And so they've been living in ponds and fresh water since before humans were on the planet. They have participated in human life since the beginning of time, yet somehow human history, we don't really talk a lot about these other organisms that we live alongside of. And so for Joel, he's interested in the way euglenia move and how their movements, and in studying the euglenia, he's sort of studied how the bodies of these euglenia move. If they're going straight, they are seeking, and of course if they're curling up, they are confused. And so he's interested in this idea of communication not necessarily being something that's anthropocentric, something that might happen through movement or vibration, or the way communication happens beyond human species. So this piece, he is studying the euglenia with this microscope, and he's using a machine learning algorithm that's analyzing their movement. And he is doing blob detection, so he's seeing if they're long and thin and if they're curved and round. And so he's able to assign sort of human emotions, human type emotions, to what these euglenia are feeling. And then he's also using excerpts from James Joyce's Portrait of a Young Man and replacing some of the words with the emotions of the euglenia in real time. And I think for me this piece is really interesting because what he's doing is he's sort of focusing on an organism that has shared the planet with humans since the very beginning of time, yet somehow none of our stories really include the euglenia. And the euglenia will play an increasingly large role in human futures. So here he has this this wall mural that sort of talks about how euglenia will be used in the future, from becoming a nutritional supplement to being used in bioremediation, neurocomputing, and biofuel. And so here he's also introducing the movement of the euglenia and suggesting that that movement is a type of speech, and it is a type of communication. And by inserting it into this sort of story of James Joyce, he's sort of intermingling human experience and the experience of the Euglenia into one sort of cohesive whole. So this artwork is called Atmospheric Forest, and it's by artist duo Raza Smit and Reda Smit. And it was produced in 2020. And so this is a Latvian artist duo, and they actually collaborated with scientists who were studying a forest in Switzerland. And the scientists have been studying this forest, and it's actually considered a living laboratory. And so they're studying absolutely everything in the forest. And the forest itself is actually suffering from drought. And so it's exploring the volatile organic compounds, so that what we call VOCs, and I'll refer to them as VOCs from now on. But VOCs are basically the volatile compound that trees release that we recognize as the scent of a forest. So the scent of pine, the scent of spruce, those are all VOCs. And so they're studying the VOCs, they're studying moisture content, they're studying all sorts of things from this forest, which is, as I mentioned before, suffering from drought. And so they're also looking at resin pressure and all these different things. And so it is said that these trees, well, it's hypothesized that these trees are producing more VOCs because they are under stress. And right now, scientists are researching the relationship between VOCs and environmental change as well. And so this piece here, you can see, is a point cloud. So what happened was the artist Raza and Radis, they went to the forest and they scanned it with a LiDAR. And LiDAR is a type of capturing medium that it's like video, but it records everything in points, and you're able to get quite refined detail, as you can see from the video. And so here they've been able to visualize the VOCs as well as the resin, and you'll see at points there are going to be these yellow movements that are moving up along the trunk that show you, and you can also see the particulates leaving the trees, which are to represent the VOCs. Of course, this is a VR piece, and so you can put the helmet on. There is audio inside the VR helmet, and as you move your head around, you're able to look around and experience the space, because this video is also 360. It's 100% 3D space that you can sort of move around and look around inside of. It's a really beautiful piece, and there's a number of scenes that they've recorded, and it's just sort of cycling through these different scenes. So you can see all of the movement happening in the spaces between trees, and I think that's what's really powerful about this type of work, is that it's visualizing phenomenon that's beyond human perception. So this is an artwork created by Grace Grothus. It's entitled Dawning. It was commissioned for this exhibition and created in 2023. The piece is comprised of video that you can see is hanging, so that's being projected onto this sort of hanging screen, as well as an audio component. Both video and the audio is being affected in real time by live sensor data that's set up in a forest in Cambridge, Ontario, called the Rare Charitable Reserve. So there's a number of sensors that are in this forest that are recording wind speed, light, temperature, humidity, rain, particulate matter, volatile organic compounds, and such. But on top of that, the actual piece itself, it's entitled Dawning, but what it's actually doing is it's sort of paying tribute to the circadian rhythm that happens pretty much across the planet in all living life forms, from animals to insects to even fish, that all of these organisms, all these creatures that live on the planet, they participate in a morning chorus. They sort of sing in the morning. They start, and now if you've ever been to a forest, if you've ever been to a jungle, at dawn you start to hear all of the monkeys start making sounds, you hear the cicadas making more sounds, even in the evening as well. And so this is something humans don't actually participate in. It's something that only animals are doing. I guess we no longer participate for a variety of reasons, including electricity and living in homes that separate us from the natural world. And so this piece is really inviting people to participate in that morning chorus. So you can see there's a microphone there, and you can join in and you can sing with the insects, you can sing with the monkeys, and you can sort of experience the dawning. So this is an artwork by Lindsay French called Fidovision. It was produced in 2021. The central, I guess, thematic or the subject of this artwork is an old growth forest called Cook Forest in western Pennsylvania. So the artist here is interested in getting the viewer to experience the forest or the Cook Forest through the eyes and experience of a plant, I guess, is one way of putting it. So she's done a lot of recordings of the Cook Forest, but she's using a very, very high frame rate. And what ends up happening is that you get these super crisp videos, and they're also done in a very particular color palette. So she's using a color palette that only, like, that plants can see. So plants can see on the spectrum of blue and red, and so she's shooting everything. So it's almost to create this context of becoming plants. So you're seeing the way a plant might see. She's also done geophone recordings of Cook Forest and played them back using transducers. And so there's transducers inside this seating platform as well as in this leaning wall. So plants obviously don't have ears, but they do sense their environment. They sense their environment through vibration, through volatile organic compounds, through all sorts of phenomenon. And so here she's sort of creating this experience of being in the Cook Forest, but kind of being a part of the Cook Forest. And so you see the way plants see, you experience the world the way the plants experience sound. And there's also a scent factor. So here she's got these sort of scent reeds that are coming down on the side on the wall here. And these, the scent that she's using is terpenes. So I've used in the past in different interviews about this show, I often say volatile organic compounds. A terpene is a type of volatile organic compound, and the terpenes, the terpene scent that she's using in this particular case is the scent of white pine and hemlock, which is diffused in the air. So there's a very, very mild scent of that in this space as well. So this is an artwork that I created in collaboration with two other artists, Fadi Fazi and Ilse Brida, also known as Kavi. This artwork is comprised of two visualizations. You can see the larger one on the right and a point cloud on the left. So this is using the Foresta Inclusive infrastructure, which is a sensing infrastructure that was installed in a forest in Cambridge, Ontario, called the Rare Charitable Reserve. At Rare, we've put in these pods. These pods look like these that are over here. And these pods are installed in the forest, and they collect data, such as volatile organic compounds, humidity, light, temperature, particulates, all the typical sensing phenomenon, all the phenomenon that's sort of beyond human sensory perception, except for light and wind and stuff like that. And so here we're gathering all this data from the forest. It's sending the data to the cloud, and then I'm harvesting that data here in the gallery. So I've created this visualization with Fadi Fazi, and I've created this point cloud visualization with Ilse Brida, or otherwise known as Kavi. And so it's also comprised of an interface here, which I can use to interact with this visualization, which is also a scent sculpture. And so I also have this connected to the internet as well. And so whenever it rains, it releases the scent of geosmin. And geosmin is the smell that we associate with the forest. So basically, it's a bacteria that's living in soil, and every time it rains, it releases geosmin. And that's the smell of mud. That's the smell of moss. That's that woody smell that I can't explain, but you know it as soon as you smell it. And so there's basically water with geosmin in the bottom, and every time it rains in the forest, it releases that geosmin into the atmosphere. To interact with this visualization, you can put your hand into it, and you can enter into the 24 hours of the tree. So this visualization shows light changing, like so from night to day. It shows CO2 values, so everything gets nice and big and then small again when there's lots of CO2 and then not so much CO2. Whenever it's rain, it visualizes the rain. And it's also visualizing 24 hours of the forest. So if I go in here, I can actually twist it to the side and you can see each of the hours. So that was last night, that was yesterday's sunset, and then now you see that we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours into the day. And of course, then we also have this point cloud. So this point cloud was shot using a drone with LiDAR. And so here, this is the actual tree that we have the sensing pods on. So these duplicates of these pods are on this tree, and then you can see that the numbers are being updated regularly. So for me, the artwork is really about this idea of engaging with phenomenon that is beyond human sensory perception, slowing down our movement, because if you move too fast, you can't really engage. But if you become tree, very similar to Lindsay's becoming plant. If you slow your body down, you can investigate every hour of a tree's life. So this is an artwork by artist Ursula Beeman entitled Forest Mine. It was produced in 2021. And so you can see here that it consists of a large wall to ceiling to floor projection plus a floor projection that's in sync with the two projections are in sync with each other. So the piece itself is deeply rooted in a collaboration that Ursula Beeman had with the Inga community that live in Colombia. And it's kind of tied to a larger project called Devenir Universidad. And so here you have the Inga people actually making the Colombian rainforest into a university and sort of recognizing the different types of learning that can happen within a forest. So you have cloud learning and you have water learning. And so right now this is actually happening, which I think is a really exciting project, that you have this forest becoming a university and a place of learning. The central actor, I guess, well, there's a number of components to this piece that are quite interesting. One of them is the practice of ayahuasca. And so ayahuasca is a plant that is ingested that teaches us about our place in the world, that teaches us through experience. So it offers us another way of sort of understanding the world. But another subtext to this piece is about this belief, the Inga's belief, that there's this sort of vitality that connects absolutely everything in the world. And in Western science, we might call that vitality that connects everything DNA. And so, of course, DNA is a recent discovery and something that Inga people have been talking about for millennia. But what's also really interesting for me is when I think about DNA, I mean, so they've done a lot of studies. Specifically, I think Ursula has been connected with with scientists in Sweden. But they've been doing studies about encoding information into DNA. And so it makes sense that in a Western context that we create a type of technology that is binary, right? Because we live in a world where we have Cartesian dualism, man, woman, black, white. We like to separate everything with a line. And so it makes sense that we would come up with something like the binary as a way of encoding information. But you can also encode information into something like DNA. And in fact, nature has been encoding information in DNA since the beginning of time. It's robust, it's strong, it can last forever. All you need is a cool, dry place and you can store DNA. They've done some tests where they've actually encoded like Mozart's, or maybe it was all of Beethoven's artwork and pictures, and they've encoded it into DNA, they've mailed it across the planet, and then decoded it in another location. And it's completely intact. You can, in fact, store all of the world's information into DNA, and that would fit inside of the back of a van or something like that. So it's a really robust way. So this artwork suggests that there are different ways of being in the world. It recognizes the inherent robustness of understanding the world the way the Ingas do in Colombia, as contrary to sort of Western constructs of the binary. So to me, this piece is really hopeful, and it suggests that there's different types of knowledge and knowledge that's been maybe ignored and suppressed for a very long time, and the importance of listening to that and the importance of making forests universities, the importance of understanding information differently, and perhaps imagining a different way of being in the world. So this is an artwork by Dolene Tsuyoshi Manning and Mary Bunch. It's called Emerging from the Water, Resonance 2022. So this is also a very new piece. The piece started off from an online Mozilla exhibition, something that happened in Mozilla Hubs that was curated by the Sensorium in 2020, I think it was, or 2021. And it's basically a piece that is drawing from Anishinaabe traditional stories. And Manning is a philosopher, and she has theories of Mindu worlding, which is sort of looking at other than human life forms and sort of that underpins life on the planet and connects everything together. And so here they're presenting this world, and you'll see that this video here is cycling through this underwater world that's made out of these bubbles. And this is actually a three-dimensional space, so this is a world that is accessible through virtual reality. So we have these Oculus here that you can put on and you can engage. And so right now we actually are in one of these bubbles. And inside the bubbles are a number of microorganisms that live within these bubbles. So you can see there's another bubble, and then we're going to go into that one. And then inside that bubble, you can see these different types of organisms sort of floating around. Another sort of important, equally important part of this piece is this idea of the microscope and how the microscope shaped how we understood the world around us. I think before the microscope, we really had this, at least within the West, this Western concept that the body, the skin ended, like the body ended at the skin, and that we were completely autonomous and that there was no connection to the world. With microscopes, we started to see bacteria, we started to understand the world in an entirely different way, in ways that I think, you know, Anishinaabe people have sort of understood as a matter of like understanding cosmology, like a way of understanding the world through their cosmologies. So you can see here this organism that is sort of floating around. And so what they're doing is that they're creating this VR experience that allows you, the viewer, to move in and out of these bubbles and experience the more than human organism that lives within water, and water being so absolutely necessary for human life. Once again, we have another organism that's deeply intertwined with human experience, yet it's once again a story that is being ignored or hasn't been told in the way that it could be. And so these types of works go sort of present this type of story to the viewer through VR and through the video.